Hello, I'm going to demonstrate how to do the ink wash and the pastel for the value chart. Let's start with the ink wash. I'm going to take a bottle of India ink and put some in the palette. Be sure you're careful with the India ink because it will stain your clothes. And then I'm going to put a little water next to the ink. You can start out with the dark and go to the light with this, or you can start with the light and go to the dark. I usually go from light to dark. And I'm going to get just a little ink into the water. And I use a piece of scrap paper and I test it out. You want a very light value in the first square, hardly any ink at all. So that looks good to me. So I'm going to start out, put that in the first square. The thing with the ink wash is you can always get darker, you just can't get lighter once it's dried. So that's going to be good for my first square. Just a little value in there, almost white. And now I'll add a little more ink. Test it out. Still not dark enough. So I'll get a little darker. Maybe just a little more. And that'll be good for the second square. Now the first square is still wet, so you don't want to touch the first square. Otherwise it will suck the ink out of there using capillary action. So be sure not to touch it. I'm not so concerned that you stay within the lines as that you see value changes. It'll be very important this semester that you can see values all the way from light to dark. Now if you have a little too much, you can wipe your brush off. This is called a thirsty brush, and you can pick up some of that extra ink. There we go. And then we'll do square number 3. That looks pretty good for that. Another thing to keep in mind is once you get done with this and you wash out your palette, be sure to put the water in the sink on very slowly, otherwise the ink will splash up on you. So that's a good value. If this wasn't dark enough, I could always go in, let this dry, and go back in and do a second layer to make it darker. And once this wash is done, you can glue it onto your value chart with rubber cement or Elmer's glue or a glue stick. So that looks good for that. And then I'll just do one more, and then I think you'll have the idea. So you're going to go all the way, and your very last square is going to be black. Your middle square should be a middle gray. And just even that out. The thing with ink wash is you only have about 20 seconds before it starts to dry. So you do have to work fairly quickly. So that's pretty good. And then just wash out your brush with water and a paper towel. So now we're going to do the pastel, and you can use either oil pastel or chalk pastel, doesn't matter. I'm going to use the oil pastel, and I'm going to use a color right in the middle, red. And you probably have to go both horizontally and vertically. To fill it in fairly solid. You can also go diagonally to get it solid. Then this way I'm going to go to pink. So I'm going to use less pressure, less red, and I'll put some white into it, the opposite direction to even it out. And that's a little too light, so I'm going to put a little more red into it. Be sure to check your pastels when you get them out that other students haven't used it and have other colors into it. You might need to wipe them off so you don't contaminate your colors. So that's pretty good for that. Here I'm going to even use less pressure, less red. And more white. With the pastel, you can go back into it and build it up in layers. So that's pretty good for that one, that square. And now this one square will be even more white and just a little red, not much at all. And finally, this last square will be almost all white. Maybe just a little touches of red into it. So that's good that way. And then this way, we'll add black into it to go to maroon. Just a little black. Hardly any at all. More red. And more black in this square. More black. And even it out. And I think you have the idea now. You go all the way till your last square is almost all black with just a little color into it. So that's how you should do the ink wash and the pastel for your value chart.